And we're live.
Hi, welcome to the Libertarian Party of Texas Candidate Highlight. I'm Amanda Gibbs. I'm the comms director. My co host is Nathan Polsky, and he does everything else in the Libertarian Party of Texas. And today we have Joe Roberts. Hi,
Good.
Joe.
Greetings. How are you?
Doing
Good.
doing good. It's not a long day today, so already better off. All right. Well, so Joe, we know each other. You know Amanda. We all three of us kind of know each other quite a bit. But all of our viewers, well, not all, but a lot of our viewers out there may not know who Joe Roberts is. So, who are you and what are you running for?
All right. Well, first of all, I am running for the Texas House of Representatives, District 100, deep in the heart of Dallas. It is a Texas House district completely contained within the city of Dallas. Like some of your districts, which may span a county or more, it's very urban. It's very Democratic. It's very gerrymandered, and we'll get into that later. I've been a teacher and professor for almost 30 years now, heading for retirement very soon. But so I know a lot about the education system, having been an insider of it for many years, and that touches on part of my platform. But um, I am a libertarian, obviously, and I am seeking the votes of a highly Democratic district, running in a two-way race against a Democrat. There is no GOP candidate, so it will be a two-way race between me and the incumbent this year.
I love two-way races. That usually gives us a lot better. It's still a hard shot to win, but much better odds and turnout there. So, um, what kind of got you into what was your libertarian story? A lot of us came in the party. Gary Johnson or before
Hmm.
then.
Right.
Some of us were Republicans before, some of us were Democrats before, but
Hmm.
I think all of us kind of saw that light at one point that said, you
Hmm.
know what, I'm a libertarian. So,
Hmm.
first question is, what was yours? And then second question is, what made you decide to just go from being a libertarian to, you know what, I'm going to throw my name in the race and I'm going to run for office?
Good questions. Okay, so first of all, my libertarian story is a rather drawn out one. I left the two-party system a long time ago. In the year 2000, I was actually the Dallas County chair of the Reform Party. So at that time, I was seeking for an alternative to both the Democrats and Republicans. I've known for a long time that neither of them are serving the needs of the people. They're serving their own needs and the needs of the elites. So that's one of the things that drew me away. Gradually, I became more or less politically homeless. I never went back. I never looked back toward either the GOP or the Democrats. Gradually, probably in the mid 2010s, I started gravitating more toward libertarianism. It wasn't a Ron Paul moment. It wasn't a Gary Johnson moment. It was actually cryptocurrency that brought me in, strangely enough, because I just became aware of, and I'd had libertarian sentiments before. I'd become enraged, for example, when the city of Dallas outlawed smoking sections in private businesses.
Mm-hmm.
My instant take was, it's their business. If the customers choose to go there, it shouldn't be up to the government. So I've had libertarian tendencies for a while, but it was actually Bitcoin. I started looking at Bitcoin in 2013, and not just as an investment like a lot of people are today, but just the ability that it has to be decentralized, to escape the control and of the government. The fact that it is not an inflationary currency like what we have here. There were other countries that were cracking down. At that time in 2013, the country of Cyprus actually went in and took a portion of everyone's bank accounts to bail out the government of some of their debts, and they had no recourse. And I thought, if that can happen in Cyprus, well, it could happen here someday. And so I started looking more into that. And the strangest thing, the people who were supporting, the people who were some of the thought leaders in the whole cryptocurrency, they happen to be libertarians or anarcho-capitalists, but definitely anti-government, more personal freedom, individual freedom. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what led me down the rabbit hole. I said, well, if all these people are agreeing with me on this, what else might they be agreeing with me on, and what else can I learn from them? And it was to that point in time, and eventually in 2019 is when I formally joined the Libertarian Party. I did run in 2022 for this same seat. It was an open seat at the time, and it was a great experience, one of the coolest experiences of my life, I'll say. And so I did want to repeat it just so that I could connect with my community,
Mm-hmm.
to spread libertarian ideas, to see how I can encourage them to be more free and to get government out of the way, so that the great things that are happening already in these communities can continue without all the red tape, without all the interference from the government.
Awesome.
So I've never heard your story before, Joe.
Well, there you go, and it's preserved forever on the internet.
I,
It
I'm
is.
a little fascinated with the Reform Party thing because my first presidential vote was for Ralph Nader in
Okay,
2004, and he
okay.
was a Reform Party person.
Well,
So,
yeah, he was more green. He was Green Party usually, but yeah.
but in 2004, he ran for the Reform Party.
Really? Okay. Yeah, I had
Mhm.
already. Yeah, there was some internal conflict there, and I eventually said this is not a viable, a viable way to get things accomplished. I also had grew to have some differences as far as the platform is concerned and everything. But what
Hmm.
really attracted me to it was the fact that it was, and this was post Ross Perot. So Ross Perot already stepped back by that time from the Reform Party. So Pat Buchanan was actually the candidate in 2000. So it was, but just the idea of running counter to the narrative of the Democrats and Republicans, it was definitely, I think at the time, one of the most, it was the option that seemed best to me at the time. Like I said, I've
Yeah.
grown more libertarian in the interim, but that was definitely my first foray away from thinking just in left and right, R&D, elephants and donkeys.
Now you got porcupines.
Yes, we do.
Do you want me to ask the next one?
Go for it. I'm always the one asking questions, so
I
go.
know, because I'm conversation. Just can you outline your key priorities or platform issues for this specific campaign?
Okay, so my stretch goal is to, if I'm elected, to eliminate property taxes in the state of Texas. All right, we've already successfully written out income taxes in our constitution, and I would like to do the same for property taxes. I see those as some of the most pernicious taxes out there, because basically it's requiring people, even those who own their homes outright, to more or less pay a rent check to the government every year at the risk of losing their homes. My house district, as I mentioned before, is a very high poverty district. It's some of the poorest zip codes probably in Texas, definitely in urban parts of Texas. And some of those property owners have seen their home values go up 50% or as much as 75% from last year. And I'm not talking McMansions here. I'm talking, you know, 1,200 square foot, 1,000 square foot homes that were built in the 30s and 40s. And what's happening is a lot of gentrification. Developers are coming in, taking advantage of that, counting, either buying them out for well under what their assessed value is. So I'm really wanting to help people, property owners, protect their property against government encroachment through the whole property tax. Also, the whole idea that, like I said, the idea that we are still having to pay, and the government has the power to take away something that has been justly acquired by us. Just it's evil. It's absolutely evil. In addition to that, like I said, because I do live and campaign in a high minority district, so it's 90% non-white. It's over 50% black in this district. So when we're talking about things like over policing, when we're talking about police stomping on their rights, this isn't just an academic issue for them. This is something they experience day to day. So ending qualified immunity, holding bad cops accountable, absolutely priority. Decriminalizing marijuana. Again, these families have been separated because their peaceful relatives have been thrown in jail. They have not harmed anybody. I talked to one guy back in 2022 when I said that he hung his head and he said, the only trouble I've ever been in my entire life was because of weed. And he'd been locked up and he'd been separated from his family. And of course, that it just increases the poverty situation. It swells our population in our prisons, which are poorly managed as well. And it costs the taxpayers money. There's just not a good reason to keep people in there. Also, people who are there currently for nonviolent drug offenses, I want them out. I want their records expunged. I want so that they can go out and find a job, so that their past of possessing, a few grams of marijuana isn't standing in their way of economic prosperity because they can't get a job because they have a record. So, in other words, I'm just trying to get the government out of the way. And again, lastly, I there's so many good things going on in these communities, helping people on a community level, on a neighborhood level, to not only survive, but to thrive. So I want to be a part of helping people move from poverty to prosperity. I think the best way that I can do that is to get myself and to get government out of the way so that the people who are already there invested, doing good things, have a good track record so that they can do more of that, so that they don't have the government either competing with them or trying to put, roadblocks and red tape up, so that the good things that they're doing, training people for jobs, helping them, fight off gentrification, helping them helping them maintain their homes, and just understanding how finances work, and all of these things that these different communities and individuals and churches are doing. um, I want to see them do that because they know best. That's their community. They understand. They know the names of the people they're working with, and I want to see governments just stop throwing a check at them and maintaining this generational poverty. That's only going to happen when people start understanding that they that just getting that check is going to, like I said, it's going to help them
Hmm.
survive, but it's never going to make them thrive. And that's what I aim for. I want to see my friends and neighbors in this community thriving, and that's going to require government getting out of the way and letting them succeed.
All right. All right. So you had mentioned that it's just a two-way race, you and a Democrat. Is the Democrat an incumbent or is it an open seat?
Yeah. So he's the one that run in 22. So he narrowly won the his Democratic primary
Hmm.
by about 60 votes. There's a lot of clicks in the, as especially in the African American Democratic community. You have these different teams that, so it's not uncommon to see 3 or 4 candidates for the primary, and it's generally understood that, especially in this district, it's been taken for granted until I started running for office that whoever won the Democratic primary just skates into office. So
Hmm.
he had 3 challengers. He did win by 50.76% of the votes, so less than a percent avoided a runoff. So that's not uncommon when you have, that number of candidates. But so
Hmm.
he'll be his name is Benton Jones, and he is running again for the office. So they're
All right.
rematched.
All right. So something else that we've heard from other candidates is that the representatives in office, if you have any issues, if you want to try to reach out to them, you pick up the phone, you call them, you leave a message. They never return the call. You send them an email, they never respond to you. Have you had that kind of experience with your opponent, or have you heard anything about that? And
Yeah, so I have not had that experience with my opponent. It may be because I did manage to get 15% of the vote this
Mhm.
last time. So when he finds out I'm in Austin, often he'll reach out to me. Now, that's my experience as a candidate
Mhm.
who's gaining attention within it. So that may be a reason he's reaching out to me. I do know that when I was block walking, when I was going door to door, I had people telling me, "Oh, that you're the first person that's come to me. I've never spoken to a
Mhm.
candidate face to face before." I had one gentleman who said, "I'm going to vote for you just because you came out to my house to talk to me." And I know that the Democrats will block walk for a photo opportunity or things like that, but I'm very I'm very invested in getting to know the people that I want to represent.
Mhm.
And and from going to neighborhood association meetings across my district, from attending, let's say, like back to school functions where they're giving out the backpacks, volunteering
Mhm.
there, um, churches that have food pantries and things like that. Getting there and just knowing the people, the regulars there. It's just, and not only talking to them but listening to them about what their needs are, what they face. A lot of them will never vote Republican, but I did hear a lot of people saying the Democratic Party does not represent me either. So that's where it stands in my district. So it's a very much, and to a large degree, it's a holding their nose and voting Democrat. They're it's going to take a lot to convince them to ever vote Republican. So as I run, I understand that I'm not going to be converting a lot of people to libertarianism. So my
Mhm.
goal is to explain to them what I stand for, ensure to them that I mean this. I'm going to do this if I'm elected, and saying no matter who you vote for in the other races, on this one race, I ask you to vote for me, to put your confidence in me, and to see what I'm able to accomplish
Mhm.
on your behalf if I'm elected.
Awesome. That a lot of that just kind of answered my next question too. So got a twofer out of that one.
All right.
So you also mentioned that your district is heavily gerrymandered.
Yes.
Um, I think we all hate gerrymandering. So tell us a little bit more about what that looks like.
Well, geographically, it looks like a huge gorilla right in the middle of Dallas. So it's got this body right around. So if you've ever been to the State Fair of Texas, Fair Park is the head. I'm at the very finger of one of the arms. There's another one that stretches into West Dallas, which is predominantly it's a Hispanic and it's a Latino and a Black community. But then it stretches into, like I said, Fair Park. It
Mm-hmm.
goes into the southern parts of Dallas that are again. That are heavily African American. But it's basically it's the Republican leftovers when they gerrymandered. It meets that so, and also it does meet some, I'm sure, some civil rights rulings as far as having a majority minority district here and there. So it serves the purpose of both the Republicans. They get all of those voters out of their predominantly Republican districts,
Mm-hmm.
and but it does give them, it does give African Americans and Latinos primarily representation in the state house as well. So
It looks like a big splat.
it does. It's a I call it Donkey Kong is actually what I call it, because it's just, it's if you know the Dallas area, so it's Pleasant Grove, it is Keast Park, it is uh, Illinois Road at 35, it's Singleton and Hamptons, West Dallas, and then it's just the far east Dallas. So it just
Mm-hmm.
it's very gerrymandered, and there's no question that it resembles nothing like any traditional shape that you could think of. It's a Rorschach test.
What does this look like to you? uh,
So, no, it's my turn.
okay.
So, Joe, when you get elected, how can you share with us like how you are going to approach working with the other parties? Because obviously libertarians are small, and I don't know a lot of Greens that are running this time.
Mhm.
So, like, what is your approach with working with the the old parties?
Well, the good news is that when we're talking about individual issues, there are some Republicans who share my views on certain issues, and Democrats who share my views on others. So I'm looking to leverage that. Obviously, you have to. I mean, being a libertarian itself just means working with people who aren't like you. People, even within our party, it's people
Mhm.
who hold different personal views than you. So I'm very good at building bridges with people while still holding them to my principles. So it wouldn't be a case of me selling out, but at the same time, it would be, okay, I can work with you on this. Would you work with me on this? Because we have common cause in this area. So that's one thing that I really want to do, and maybe even, let's say, build some bipartisan support for something. There's no shortage. For example, let's take the property tax and taxing. There are a lot of other there are a lot of other representatives who are representing poor urban areas in Texas.
Mhm.
This could be an issue that would resonate with them. I would also use if I were elected as a libertarian, that's one thing that might give me a little bit more of is name recognition and getting myself out there, because I'd be this this weird anomaly in a state house. So if I could become, let's say, the libertarian Bernie Sanders in Texas, where I could use that to be vocalize some of the areas and maybe galvanize constituents from other representatives districts and to have them call. And so
Mhm.
I mean it'd be working with the representatives, but also as I publicly present these views that I think a lot of Texans stand behind, um, to get them to reach out to their representatives as well. So again, being vocal, um, being winsome about it, so making it an attractive proposition rather than, and showing how it's humane and is in their best interest. It is less expensive for the taxpayer, and everybody wins. Everybody wins when we just leave each other alone, and
Mhm.
when we get government out of the way. Once you can convince people of that, and they can convince their representatives that we don't want you taking this point of view. And who knows what points of view may sway, through the dialogue and the conversation as well. So, but yeah, I'm definitely a bridge builder, and I can work with people on either side of that Republican Democratic aisle as long as it's geared toward making people more free.
All
Can
right.
just see the everybody going to Joe. in the House.
Hey,
Well, it
Joe.
would be nice if I were the deciding vote in a couple of times. I don't know in our current our current legislative situation whether I would be the swing vote or not. But if that ever happens, I'm prepared to wheel and deal in stick to my principles at the same time.
Well, so there's a lot of politicians are what we call career politicians. They graduate high school, they go into college, they become a lawyer of some sort, and then they immediately go into politics. Um, Libertarians, I don't know of any that have done that. There's very few libertarians that have been elected into public office that are partisan races.
Hmm.
And you mentioned you are a teacher, a former teacher. Do you feel that being a teacher gives you a certain set of skills or knowledge that you could bring to office? And if not, or in addition to, what other skills that you may bring?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, for example, one of the issues that's going to be big this session is obviously school choice.
Hmm.
Um, like I said, I can bring my perspective as a teacher, as far as what is like. Um, I and I've also seen the alternatives to traditional government education that have, especially which have exploded since the pandemic. I think that I always say that's one of the silver linings of the pandemic, that it really, since it brought Zoom school into people's homes, it really showed parents, especially parents that had no idea what was going on, how much waste and how much
Hmm.
more their how much better their students' education could be. We see all this fighting amongst people wanting this type of education, this in schools, and we don't want this in schools, whether it be the masks or whether it be including CRT, critical race theory, and all those other things that people are scared of, etc. Um, I think that the best solution, rather than treating education as this huge football that people are fighting over control of everything, is to let people who feel that their students, their kids should be educated in a different manner about different things, the freedom to do that. And then, like I said, everybody's more peaceful when you're not saying, I want not just my kids to do this, but your kids to do the same thing.
Hmm.
So I bring that experience. Obviously, also I've managed people. I've learned to work with people of all different ethnicities, backgrounds, religions, and the students. I've learned to work with bureaucracy. There's, if you're talking about bureaucracy,
Hmm.
school district administration is definitely that. So I'm no fan of it, and um, so so fighting against that and to be a little bit subversive against it, when necessary for the good of those concerned, is not something I'm opposed to doing either.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of bureaucracy to be had and to navigate through. So much red tape
Hmm.
and backstabbing and backroom deals that you have to watch out for. Amanda, I'm going to let you do the
I
next
was,
one.
hang on. You just did the skills. Let's see. How can you ensure the transparency and accountability of your actions if you are elected?
Okay, and that's something that's very important to me. Obviously, I'm not managing millions of dollars like my opponents. Like my opponent. I'm not holding $20,000 plate dinners for fundraising and things like that. So first of all, there's not a lot of money to mismanage in the first place if you're talking about a libertarian. But if I'm elected, I'm a straight shooter. I'm not somebody who's going to be saying one thing for the sake of. I'm not going to be a Donald Trump, for example, who says, "Oh, these are libertarians. I'm going to promise libertarian things," or I'm talking to service workers, and so I'm going to say, you know, we're not going to tax service workers anymore. I'm not someone who's going to be making those empty promises. I'm one of the things that my constituents asked me during the last campaign. They were not saying these are crazy ideas. We hate these ideas. They were saying, Joe Roberts, if you are elected, do you promise you'll do these things? They didn't believe. They're like, because a couple of things. First of all, they didn't believe a politician was actually saying these things. But also, it's many of them have heard those promises before. Oh, we're going to decriminalize marijuana. We're going to get people out of. But again, that's something that they run on every time, and it never seems to get done. So And I said, that is the only reason I'm going. I'm not going to amass wealth. I'm not
Hmm.
going to secure clout or power or whatever. I want to make people more free. That is the only reason. And as soon as I get in there, that's what I'm going to do. And if someone comes along in my district after me who shares those ideas, let's say we have other libertarians spring up in my house district as a result who are better suited to the job, I will be happy to step aside and say, you take the ball now. It's not about me. It's not about gaining glory or fame or power or anything like that. All I want to do is make our state more free and the individuals in our state all across the state more free.
Hmm.
And that's as simple as it gets. And I invite people to challenge me, to criticize me. I'll be open to discussions with people who disagree with me. But one thing I won't do is I won't lie about what my agenda is, and no matter how unpopular it may be with certain quarters,
Hmm.
because this is what I'm about. Take me, leave me, whatever. This is, if you vote for me, this is what you're going to get.
Right. Right, and that's important too. As you said, a lot of politicians promise the moon, and you get a blade of grass, if that.
I was thinking a moon pie.
um, all right, so you touched on this a little bit earlier, but let's say you do get elected.
Hmm.
Joe Roberts now has to represent this entire district. How do you plan on involving your constituents in some of your decision making processes?
Okay. So I've already connected with a great number of community leaders,
Hmm.
people in different areas. Like I said, some of them are defending their homes against an encroachment of developers who are in bed with city leaders, for example.
Hmm.
Some of them are, like I said, doing job training. There's one, for example, one such organization is called Bonton Farms. It's in South Dallas. It was founded a number of years ago, but basically it's taking people who either have been in the incarcerated or gotten into some
Hmm.
trouble. They have a farm out there. They have tiny house community now. They raise animals. They have a store. They have a cafe. They have a restaurant where they're training people to be chefs. So what they're doing is they're not just saying, here, we wish you the best. It's like, take them under their wing. Some people have maybe made a few wrong turns or have gotten into some trouble, and when they're done, they not only have a job skill, but they have a different outlook on life and saying that this is not the only route I have to take. There are all kinds of things that I want to involve those people in the decision making. Definitely, but besides the churches and the private schools out there that are helping, and the food pantries and other community leaders, I want to involve the voters themselves. So
Hmm.
I'm definitely going to be holding town hall meetings on a regular basis, inviting people to. I'll continue to go to neighborhood association meetings when it's not an election year,
Hmm.
and just so that I can, whenever I'm in town, so I can touch base, not only tell them what's going on, but to hear from them as far as what their needs are, because it is about all of us. It's not, I'm representing them. And so I have to keep a clear eye and an open ear to what the issues are and how we can address those from a libertarian perspective in order that they succeed.
I love that. I wish that my House district rep currently would listen to anyone besides his party. So,
Right.
Yeah, once you get into office, most it's whatever, it's toe that party line, right? So that's what we see currently in the Texas legislature is Republicans are going to only listen to the Republican voters, and Democrats are only going to listen to the Democrat voters. Um, if you only listen to the Libertarian voters, there'd be what 10,
Yeah.
10 to listen to.
As a handful, and even if like I said, there's it's about 11% Republican in the district as well, based on primary voters. So, obviously, I could, if I just listened to Democratic voters and bought in, I could win. But I do want to hear the needs of everyone involved, because we're
Hmm.
we're all individuals, and all of us benefit when all of us are more free from government tyranny and influence.
Hmm. Right, Amanda,
I'm just
you
good.
just you
You
just
got another
enjoying.
one? I am. Like, I love listening to Joe. I get to work with him a lot, but like
Mhm.
hearing is way better.
Let's see. I'm going through my list here. You've knocked out most of them. We can see. Let's see how you can handle this one. Um, so I know you talked about like one of your key priorities is to eliminate property taxes.
Correct.
Um, can you describe your vision, or there's a lot of talk. Let's see if I can rephrase this. There have been other candidates that have run for governor and for other positions within the Texas legislature who have talked about limiting property taxes, and they've all kind of come up with their own solution. Some of them I don't agree with. Some of them are kind of on the line there. If you were to get elected and your key focus is eliminating property taxes, do you have a bill structured already, or do you have a something in mind on what that strategy would look like?
Well, it would probably be a constitutional amendment similar to what got rid of income taxes in Texas.
Hmm.
I did, interestingly enough, in my last campaign, I had very few people ask me anything along the lines of, well, how are we going to pay for things? And it's a valid question.
Hmm.
But so many people were just relieved because they saw their property tax valuations, and they saw how much they were expected to pay. And they said, oh, I just need relief. They
Hmm.
weren't even thinking about how we're going to pay for the police or the roads or the schools. But to answer that question, because it is a question, it is a valid question. Um, First of all, I think that, do I have a plan for the Texas what to do? I do not,
Hmm.
and that may seem like a very unpolitician answer, but my response is that each county, there are 254 counties in Texas.
Hmm.
We are a very diverse state. Dallas County, where I lived, highly urban and suburban, is very different from Dallam County up in the Panhandle with
Hmm.
a tiny fraction of the population of my county. What works in Dallas isn't necessarily what's going to work in a different county to raise those funds necessary. Um, what's going to happen is I trust, first of all, I trust that county government is going to find a way to get money out of people. That's one thing that we're sure of. But it may look different in El Paso than it does in Midland, than it
Hmm.
does in Lubbock, than it does in San Antonio, than it does in far East Texas. I'm going to trust local communities and local leaders. In other words, I'm trying to take one thing off the table. I'm not telling them how to do it. I want to just take one thing off that impedes the freedom and financially burdens the citizens of property owners, especially in the state of Texas, but even renters, because those property taxes get
Right.
passed on to them as well. So a lot of people who rent say, well, it's not my problem. If you have a home, if you're renting or buying, this is your issue. It's an issue that faces everybody. And the other side of that is if some counties discover, oh, wait, we have to live with less. If we
Hmm.
put these counties on a diet, is that such a bad thing? I think that there's a lot of government waste out there. So if we have to starve the state a little bit so that so they slim down and they cut their bloated budgets
Hmm.
for things that sound really nice but could either be handled by private industry much better or that aren't really needed or wanted by the majority of citizens at all. You know, what can be cut back on? It's sort of like, you know, when you suddenly realize your pay has gone down. You can't keep spending the same way. You had to make some decisions. It's time that our county governments and our school districts and our municipalities face that especially the ones that are, runaway spending. Let's put them on a diet and see, oh, there's no more money coming in. What are you going to do? What are you going to cut back on? What are your priorities? What is best for the citizens as a whole?
So you mean cities and counties will no longer be inclined to purchase $500 million stadiums or gymnasiums
Mhm.
Or golf
And
or
courses.
golf courses?
local or just, especially things that benefit like a certain community
Hmm.
and don't ben, they're beautifying a particular community per se, but they're not they're not really doing anything that we all agree on what the as libertarians agree on the functions of government. Government, if it exists, is to protect our lives and to protect our liberty,
Hmm.
okay, to protect our freedom. Anything beyond that, I mean, for example, we just had a $1.25 billion bond package in Dallas that was passed. Every aspect of it was passed. And it included things like rehabbing the art museum and money for libraries. And I love museums, I love libraries. Why is it the business of a city to manage a library? Why are they taking money out of people's pockets instead of securing that money from private donors or corporate donors and people who would take ownership of that rather than just taking it out of our
Hmm.
pockets every time we spend money here or when someone comes here and stays in a hotel, whatever. um,
Hot
there are
taxes.
some things that are great that I love, and at the same time I say this is not the government's business to be doing this. I would be happy to donate to that. I'd be happy to support many of those things,
Hmm.
but it's not the government's job to take money from us to fund those things. They aren't proper functions of government. So if we turn off the spigot a little bit and the money doesn't come in the way it does in our property tax system, good, good.
Hmm. Now I know there's two different trains of thought with when for libertarians getting into office and wanting to make sweeping changes.
Mm-hmm.
There's the let's just cut it off tomorrow, and
Mm-hmm.
then there's the let's set an end of life for this existing thing for 1 year out or 2 years out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Making a constitutional amendment to end property taxes, would you be wanting to do the former or the latter in that regard?
I would actually want to just cut the demon's head off
Cut it right
immediately.
off and see what
And
happens.
it's two reasons behind that. Number one, if we like go down that road and for some reason I'm not reelected or someone else doesn't, I mean, it's something that needs to end now, first of all.
Hmm.
And if this incremental thing, that's what we see. We see, we're gonna give homestead, raise the
Hmm.
homestead exemption, or we're gonna eliminate taxes for this special group of people. And what that does is it helps a small group of people, but that doesn't they
Hmm.
just raise the taxes on everybody else. So that's not it's pitting us against each other, first of all. But the idea is that I'm going, it just needs to end. Secondly, if we're talking about a constitutional amendment, if that passes, that goes to the voters of Texas. Now, what do you think is going to happen if the voters of Texas suddenly have on their ballots a constitutional amendment to get rid of their property taxes?
Sign me up.
And like I said, it's not just the libertarians, who will come out to sign that. It's everyone who has been oppressed by these excessive, pernicious taxes that are tied to their livelihood, their homes,
Hmm.
and so that's why I want to go that route. Now, I did face people in 22 when I said that. They didn't say this is a crazy idea or how you pay for this. I did have a lot of people who said, "Oh, they're never going to let you do that," and by they meant the people in power. And that may be true, but I think it's a discussion that really sincerely needs to be had by somebody who means it.
Hmm.
And like I said, if I can use my platform as the only libertarian legislator in Texas to broadcast that across the state, not just to my district, but to people in other districts so that they can be ringing up their own reps and their own senators. That could, I mean, it's gonna be an uphill battle. There's no question about that.
Hmm.
But it's a conversation that needs to be had, and it needs to be on record who is standing in the way of that as well and who's
Mm.
supporting it.
Hmm.
So once you get that ball rolling and you're public about it, people have to, elected officials have to, at least in some sense, take a stand one way or the other so that the voters will know who's in their corner on this and who's not. So
Yep. So instead of eliminating property taxes and replacing with X, it's eliminate property taxes and replace it with nothing.
or replace it, or have the counties and
Right.
municipalities replace it with something else, whether that's raising the sales tax. I think that they could. I mean, I have no doubt that they can get creative, like I said, as far as finding ways to raise more money.
Hmm.
But with income tax and property tax off the table, they're going to have to find either different ways of doing that, or they're going to have to shift some of the things to the private sector, or they're going to have to just cut out stuff that's really, really unnecessary in the first place. So,
I'm here for all of
okay.
it.
So I did think of something because you have talked about like the decriminalization or
Yes.
is that your word,
Yeah, it's
decriminalization?
decriminalization
Is
because the way I look at it is legalization is the government giving you permission to do something. Decriminalization is basically just removing all the penalties from the books, and so people aren't asking permission; they're just not going to be punished for doing what they decide on their own to do. Also
Okay.
with criminalization, also with legalization, that often comes with, we're going to legalize it and we're going to tax it.
Yep.
This could be, let's raise money off of the backs of people who want to buy, to buy recreational drugs. I'm not here for that either. I'm not here for, because again, that doesn't eliminate black markets, because what happens is it's inevitably cheaper through those traditional channels once you start adding the taxes onto it. And that's a situation they face in Colorado. I know a lot of people in Colorado where it's legal, but they still choose not to go to the dispensaries. They choose to, they choose to go to the back alleys and things like that, because it's cheaper, because it's a lot cheaper once the government gets, and then, once the government gets involved, the legal way is a lot more expensive, believe it or not.
So how will you, based off of what we have seen, the Dan Patrick's like lining out of what he wants to happen, like how will you combat that? Because I do know that he's trying to go after that market that is legal right now with like the
Right.
Delta 8 and Delta 9 and stuff like
Right.
that. Like, so how would you combat that with what,
Well,
kind
that's
of
a
we
good
all want?
question. Now, I don't know, and I would leave that to the Senate to handle that, because he's over there, and he has definitely been a huge roadblock to any decriminalization efforts, and not letting even these bills get put on the calendar for discussion.
Yeah.
That's the biggest hurdle, and that's one of our problems, is that when we have an individual, a centralized point of failure, who is the gatekeeper for all of this, it's not much better than a monarchy when someone's deciding, what gets through and what doesn't. I don't have any easy answers for that. I know in the House, if I'm elected, it's definitely going to be an issue that gets brought up over and over again if they try to block bills on it in the House. It's something that I would be very vocal about. And again, I'm not I'm not politically aligned with AOC or Bernie Sanders, but one thing I've learned from them is that when they have an audience, they influence people a lot further beyond their own congressional districts, okay, or their Senate, or their state. In the case of Bernie Sanders, they once you have that pulpit, I guess bully pulpit, you have that microphone in your hand, you can reach out. And so, I'm going to do my job in the office, and on the floor, but at the same time, I'm not averse to being a vocal activist for things that I'm trying to push through as well, and getting that popular support for those things.
Do you see a lot of Democrat support in the House right now? I know Texas is, you know, people say that Texas is, one of the most free states.
Right.
Economically, sure. Socially, not even close. It's like the lowest on the totem pole, and that leads to that decriminalization as well. So, I know Republicans are there. May be one or two that may support decriminalization, but what about the Democrats?
So obviously, you do see a little bit more support among the Democrats for that. Whether that, and again, the question is, do they support it knowing it's going to be not going anywhere? It's sort of like on the Republican side, we'll have, the on the abortion argument, to eliminate abortion completely. In Congress, for example, we're going to outlaw abortion. But when the Republicans held the House and the Senate and the presidency for 2 years, there was not a single, I'm not advocating for or against that. But what I'm saying is that a lot of times political parties keep issues unresolved so that they can fundraise and give themselves a reason to be reelected.
Oh yeah.
But I would say that there's more Democrats in favor of that. But I do think there's some Republican support as well, where it's not, they're not super in favor of it, but it's like, at some point, I think there's a tide is turning where people are saying, this isn't reefer madness. This is not a case where, it's not a gateway drug. In a lot of cases, it's not something, no one's going to get high and, shoot up a stadium or something like that. It's people are understanding that it's not a personal threat in most cases. And I think that a lot of people are just, outside of the social media sphere, a lot of people are just willing to leave other people alone. Okay. It's not for me, or it's for me. But if you're against it or you're for it, it's none of my business. As long as it's not impacting my life, do what you want, which is, of course, is libertarianism at its core.
I've seen polls. I can't remember which college does it. I want to say that it's in Tyler, but I could
Hmm.
totally be off. But it was something like 60% of Texans polled are okay with decriminalization or legalization. I
Right,
can't
right,
remember exactly the
right.
phrasing on that one. Of recreational, like that's a large number. So that, and especially in Texas, it is obviously a majority of people,
Hmm.
but we're not seeing that happen, and it's very frustrating.
Right. And there's a saying out there that politics follows culture. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, cultural changes eventually lead to political changes. We can see that on things like gay marriage. You look back at 2008 to 2006, Democrats were saying, don't ask, don't tell. They were saying, we're against gay marriage. And then all of a sudden, once popular support for it grew, suddenly they said, oh, now we feel safe supporting things like this. Same thing's true, I think, with the marijuana thing. Eventually, there's going to be enough people saying, why are you fighting so hard against this? We don't care. All
Mm-hmm.
right. It's something that, again, it's something that's causing our prisons to be full. It's that there's no upside. Once people realize that there is absolutely no upside to decriminalize, I mean, to maintaining our strict laws against marijuana, and to ruin people's lives over possessing it, then I mean then the sensible thing for politicians to do is to back off of that and say, okay, we give.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be a part of that. I want to be a spearhead of that.
Yes.
So
We need
I'm
some
here for it.
spearheads. All right. All right. So, how is your campaign going around this time? I know last time you did lots of block walking. Are you doing that this time?
it's ramping up at this point. We had our conventions, our libertarian nominating conventions and things like that. So we've been busy with that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're touring around the party. I have been to neighborhood association meetings,
Mm-hmm.
reconnecting with a lot of the people that I got to know in the last campaign. You know some new people as well, key players in the communities that again aren't just bringing attention to themselves, but are doing the real work of equipping other people to be prosperous. So I've been doing that. Block walking will be ramping up as well. Hopefully, one thing that I definitely could use, both in addition to financial support, or people who live in the Dallas area who want to be boots on the ground, who are hearing this message and say, I want to get this message out. Because I think that the principal reason why I did not have a higher showing than the 15% or so I got in the last election was not that people hated my ideas. It's that I couldn't get to enough people enough times
Mm-hmm.
to make that impact. So if anybody listening wishes to contribute to my campaign so that I can hire people to do that, to come alongside me, or if you want to be the grunt workers, if you want to be the boots on the ground with me and go to door, and if you believe in my ideas, I absolutely welcome you to be a part of the Roberts for Liberty campaign.
And how do people get a hold of you if they are interested?
Okay, so you can email me directly at joe@robertsforliberty.com, and I will answer every email I get. My website is robertsforliberty.com. My Facebook is Roberts for Liberty, with the FOR on all of those. And the only one that has a number 4 is my Twitter, or X as it's known now. It's Roberts and the number 4 Liberty, and I'll be happy to communicate with you, reach out to you, visit your neighborhood association, visit your group, talk to any size of crowd, and to listen and to communicate what my vision is for a freer Texas.
Awesome. All right, Amanda, do you have any more questions for Joe?
Nope. That was my last question, the one
That
that you just asked.
Sorry. uh, Joe, do you have anything else you want to talk about before we call it?
Oh, like I said, I just I'm here working for all of the people of Texas, not just for those who have the ability to vote for me. A freer Texas is going to be a more peaceful Texas.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to be seeing the conflicts that we have over everything from border security to school systems, everything that we're fighting about. If we just let people be free to do their own thing and don't stop stealing people's money in the form
Mm-hmm.
of taxes as much, and stop forcing one point of view on the millions of people who live here in this state, we're all going to be a lot better off. We're going to
Mm-hmm.
politely disagree, associate with people who feel the way we do, and let other people live their lives, and there's going to be a lot more peace here.
All right. All right. Well, thank you, Joe, for joining us this evening. Thank you again, Amanda, for co-hosting with me. All of you viewers out there, this is Joe Roberts, robertsforliberty.com, running for House District 100 in Dallas.
Thank you very much for having me tonight.
All right, and thank you for
Thank
joining us.
you.
Everyone stay tuned. We've got more candidate interviews coming up. You can check us out on the Libertarian Party of Texas YouTube channel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank-